Book 4. A Bowshot Bringing War. The gods were seated near to Zeus in council upon a golden floor. Graciously Hebe served them nectar, as with cups of gold they toasted one another, looking down toward the stronghold of Iliad. Abruptly, and with oblique intent to ruffle Hera, Zeus in cutting tones remarked, "Two goddesses have Menelaus for their protege, Hera, the patroness of Argos, and Athena, known as Guardian in Bowshot. Still, they keep their distance here. Their pleasure comes from looking on. But Aphrodite, who loves all smiling lips and eyes, cleaves to her man to ward off peril from him. He thought he faced death, but she saved him. Clearly, Menelaus, whom Ares backs, has won the single combat. Let us then consider how this affair may end. Shall we again bring on the misery and din of war, or make a pact of amity between them? If only all of you were pleased to see it, life might go on in Priam's town, while Menelaus took Helen of Argos home." At this proposal, Hera and Athena murmured rebelliously. These two together sat making mischief for the men of Troy, and though she held her tongue, a sullen anger filled Athena against her father. Hera could not contain her own vexation, saying, "Your Majesty, what is the drift of this? How could you bring to nothing all my toil, the sweat I sweated, and my winded horses, when I called out that army to bear hard on Priam and his sons? Act, if you must, but not all here approve." Coldly annoyed, the Lord Zeus, who drives the clouds of heaven, answered, "Strange one, how can Priam and Priam's sons have hurt you so, that you are possessed to see the trim stronghold of Iliad plundered? Could you breach the gates and the great walls yourself and feed on Priam with all his sons and all the other Trojans, dished up raw, you might appease this rage? Do as you wish to do, then. This dispute should not leave rancor afterward between us. I must, however, tell you one thing more. Remember it. Whenever my turn comes to lust for demolition of some city whose people may be favorites of yours, do not hamper my fury. Free my hands as here I now free yours, my will prevailing on my unwilling heart. Of all the cities men of earth inhabit under the sun, under the starry heavens, Iliad stood first in my esteem. First in my heart, as Priam did, the good lance and his people. My altar never lacked a feast at Troy, nor spilt wine, nor the smoke of sacrifice, perquisites of the gods." And wide-eyed Hera answered, "Dearest to me are these 3 cities, Mycenae of the broad lanes, Argos, Sparta. Let them be pulled down. If you ever find them hateful to you, I will not interfere. I will not grudge you these, and if I should, why, balking and withholding my consent would gain me nothing, since the power you hold so far surpasses mine. My labor, though, should not be thwarted. I am immortal too. Your stock and my stock are the same. Our father, Cronos of crooked wit, engendered me to hold exalted rank by birth and by my standing as your queen, since you are lord of all immortal gods. Come, we'll give way to one another in this affair. I yield to you and you to me. The gods will follow. Only be quick, and send Athena down into the hurly-burly of the armies to make the Trojans, not the Achaeans, first to sunder the truce they swore to." This way Hera prompted him, and the father of gods and men complied by saying briskly to Athena, "In all haste down you go amid the armies to see if Trojans, not Achaeans, first will sunder the truce they swore to." Given orders to do her own will, grey-eyed Athena left Olympus, dropping downward from the crests, as though the son of crooked-minded Cronos had flung a shooting star to be a sign for men on the deep sea or some broad army, a streak of radiance and a sparkling track. Down she flashed to alight amid the troops, and wonder held them all at gaze, horse-breaking Trojans and Achaeans in leg armor. You might have heard one glancing at the next man mutter, "What is to come? Bad days again, and the bloody lines? Or can both sides be friends? Which will it be from Zeus, who holds the keys and rationing of war?" That was the question for Trojan and Achaean fighting men. Athena, meanwhile, in a soldier's guise, that of Laodocus, Antena's son, a burly spearman passed among the Trojans, looking for Pandarus, if she could find him, Lycaon's noble son. Find him she did, waiting with troops now covered by their shields, who once had followed him from the cascades of Aesepus. Near him she took her stand, and let her sharp words fly. Son of Lycaon, I have in mind an exploit that may tempt a fighting heart. Have you the gall to send an arrow like a fork of lightning home against Menelaus? Every Trojan heart would rise and every man would praise you, especially Alexandrus the prince. You would be sure to come by glittering gifts, if he could see the warrior Menelaus, the son of Atreus, brought down by your bow, then bedded on a dolorous pyre. Come now, brace yourself for a shot at Menelaus. Engage to pay Apollo, the bright archer, a perfect hecatomb of firstling lambs when you go home to your old town, Zelea. That was Athena's way, leading him on, the foolish man, to folly. He uncased his bow of polished horn of an ibex that he had killed one day with a chest shot upon a high crag. Waiting under cover, he shot it through the ribs and knocked it over. Horns together a good 4 feet in length. He cut and fitted these, mortised them tight, polished the bow, and capped the tips with gold. This weapon now against the ground, Pandarus bent hard and strung. Men of his company at the same time held up their shields to hide him, not to bring any Argives to their feet before he shot at Menelaus. He bared his quiver top and drew a feathered arrow, never frayed, but keen with waves of pain to darken vision. Smoothly on the string he fitted the sharp arrow. Then he prayed to the bright archer, Lycian Apollo, promising firstborn lambs in hecatomb on his return to his old town, Zelea. Pinching the grooved butt and the string, he pulled evenly till the bent string reached his nipple. The arrowhead of iron touched the bow, and when the great bow under tension made a semicircular arc, it sprang. The whipping string sang and the arrow whizzed away, needle-sharp, vicious, flashing through the crowd. But, Menelaus, you were not neglected this time by the gods in bliss. Athena, hope of soldiers, helped you first of all, deflecting by an inch the missile's flight, so that it grazed your skin, the way a mother would keep a fly from settling on a child when he is happily asleep. Athena guided the arrow down to where the golden belt buckles and the breastplate overlapped, and striking there, the bitter arrowhead punctured the well-sewn belt and cut its way into the figured cuirass where it stuck, although the point passed onward through the loin-guard next his belly, plated against spearheads, shielding him most now. Yet the point entered and gouged the warrior's mortal skin. Then dark blood rippled in a clouding stain down from the wound, as when a Meonian or a Carian woman dyes clear ivory to be the cheek-piece of a chariot team. Though horseman after horseman longs to carry it, the artifact lies in a storeroom kept for a great lord, a splendor doubly prized, his team's adornment and his driver's glory. So, Menelaus, were your ivory thighs dyed and suffused with running blood, your well-made shins and ankles too. Now Agamemnon, marshal of the army, looked and shuddered to see the dark blood flowing from the wound, and Menelaus himself went cold. But when he saw the lashing of the iron flange outside the wound, and barbs outside, then life and warmth came back about his heart. Meanwhile the troops heard Agamemnon groan, holding his brother's hand, and heard him say, so that they groaned as well, "The truce I made was death for you, dear brother. When I sent you forward alone to fight for the Achaeans, I only gave a free shot to the Trojans. They've ground the truce under their heels. But not for nothing have we sworn an oath and spilt lamb's blood, red wine, and joined our hands and theirs, putting our trust in ritual. No, no. If the Olympian upon the instant has not exacted punishment, he will, in his good time, and all the more they'll pay for their misdeed in lives, in wives and children. For this I know well in my heart and soul. The day must come when holy Ilion is given to fire and sword, and Priam perishes, good lance though he was, with all his people. For Zeus, the son of Cronos, benched in the azure up there where he dwells, will heave his shield of storm against them all in rage at their bad faith. So it must be. But this for me is anguish, Menelaus, if you have measured out your mortal time and are to die. Backward in depths of shame I go to the drought of Argos. The Achaeans will turn their minds again to their far lands, and we, I have no doubt, must leave behind the Argive woman Helen for the Trojans, for Priam's glory, while your bones decay in Trojan ploughland, rotting where they lie, your mission unachieved. In my mind's eye, I see some arrogant Trojan on the grave of Menelaus, the great and famous man, leaping to say, "Let Agamemnon's anger in every case come out like this. Remember, he brought an army of Achaeans here for nothing, and sailed back in the long ships again to his own land, but had to leave Menelaus behind. Someone will say it, and let the vast earth yawn for me that day." But red-haired Menelaus said, "Be calm. Courage, do not alarm the troops. The point has hit no vital spot here where it lodged. The faceted belt stopped it, and the loin guard stiff with plate the smiths had hammered out." Then Agamemnon said, "God send you're right, dear Menelaus, but the wound, we'll have a surgeon clean the wound and dress it with medicines to relieve the pain." He turned and spoke out to Talthybius the crier. "Go, quickly as you can, and call Machaon, son of Asclepius, the great healer. Call him here to examine Menelaus. A master bowman, Trojan or Lycian, has wounded him. A feat for the enemy, worry and pain for us." Talthybius obeyed, making his way amid the army, among the mailed Achaeans, everywhere looking for the soldierly Machaon. He found him standing ready, troops with shields in rank on rank around him, companies of his that came from grazing lands in Triche. Approaching him, the crier said, "This way, son of Asclepius. You are called by Agamemnon to examine Menelaus, the co-commander. A master bowman, Trojan or Lycian, has wounded him. A feat for the enemy, worry and pain for us." The message stirred him, and back the two men hastened through the army to where the red-haired captain had been hit. Gathered around him in a circle stood the Achaean peers, but through their midst Machaon quickly gained his side and pulled the arrow free of the belt and clasp. As it came out, the barbs broke off. The surgeon then unbuckled faceted belt, and underneath his loin-guard, stiff with plate the smiths had hammered out. And when he saw the arrow wound, he sucked it clean of blood, then sprinkled it with balm, a medicine that Charon gave his father. Now while they tended Menelaus, lord of the war-cry, Trojan ranks reformed with shields, and the Achaeans too put on their armour, mindful again of battle. In that hour, no one could have perceived in Agamemnon a moment's torpor or malingering, but fiery ardour for the battle test that brings honour to men. He left aside his team, his chariot, agleam with bronze. His driver, Eurymedon, a son of Ptolemaeus Pereides, reined in the snorting horses, and Agamemnon gave him strict command to bring the war-car up when weariness should take him in the legs, after inspection of all his many marshalled troops. On foot, he ranged around the men in their formations, and where he saw his charioteers in units, alert for battle, he exhorted them, "Argives, keep your courage up, for Zeus will never back up liars. Men who are first to sunder oaths, their flesh the kites will feed on. Tender fare. As for their wives and children, we'll enslave them when we take the town." On seeing any slack and unready still for hated war, he lashed at them in anger. "Rabbit hearts of Argos, are you not dead with shame? How can you stand there stunned as deer that have been chased all day over a plain and are used up at last, and droop and halt, broken in heart and wind? That is the way you look, no fight left in you. Will you stand by till Trojans overrun our line of ships, beached here above the breakers, to find out if the hand of Zeus is over you?" So as their Lord Commander he reviewed them, passing along the crowded ranks. He came upon the Cretans putting on their armour, around Idomeneus. Like a wild boar with his great heart, this captain in the van harangued his companies, and in the rear Meriones did likewise. The Lord Marshal Agamemnon, elated at the sight, said to Idomeneus in the warmest tones, "Idomeneus, you are a man I prize above all handlers of fast horses, whether in war or any labour, or at feasts whenever in their mixing bowls our peers prepare the wine reserved for counsellors. Achaean gentlemen with flowing hair may down their portions, but your cup will be filled up and filled again, like mine, to drink as we are moved to. Now the feast is war. Be as you always have been up to now." To this, Idomeneus, captain of Cretans, answered, "Son of Atreus, more than ever shall I stand by you as I swore I would. But now stir up the rest of the Achaeans to give battle as quickly as we can. The Trojans have dissolved the truce. Again, death to the Trojans. Bad times are ahead for those who overrode our pact and broke it." This fierceness made the son of Atreus happy as he passed down the crowded ranks. He came to where the two named Ajax, tall and short, were buckling on their gear. Around them armed their cloud of infantry. Like a dark cloud, a shepherd from a hilltop sees a storm, a gloom over the ocean, travelling shoreward under the west wind. Distant from his eyes, more black than pitch it seems, though far at sea, with lightning squalls driven along its front. Shivering at the sight, he drives his flock for shelter into a cavern. Grim as that were the dense companies that armed for war, with Telamonian Ajax and the other, shields pitch black and a spiny hedge of spears. Lord Agamemnon, heartened at the sight, spoke to the captains warmly. "Ajax and Ajax, captains of Argos in your mail of bronze, I have no orders for you. There's no need to put you in a mood for war. It's clear you've passed your fighting spirit to your troops. Oh, Father Zeus, Athena and Apollo, if only every heart was strong as these. Lord Priam's fortress would go down before us, taken in a day and plundered at our hands." With this he left them there, and passing on to others as they formed, he found Lord Nestor, the Pylian master orator, haranguing soldiers of Pylos, forming them for action around the captains Pelagon, Alastor, Chromius, Haemon, and the marshal Bias. Charioteers with teams and cars he sent forward, and kept his infantry behind to be the bristling bulk and hedge of battle, placing weak men and cowardly men between brave men on either side, so willy-nilly all would be forced to fight. The chariot men he first instructed in the way of battle, charioteers to keep their team in line, not to be tangled, cut off in the melee. "None of you should rely so far on horsemanship or bravery as to attack alone, much less retreat alone. That way you are most vulnerable. Let any man in line lunge with his lance when he can reach their chariots from his own. You'll fight with far more power. In the old days, cities and walls were overthrown by men who kept this plan in mind and fought with courage." So ran the old man's exhortation, shrewd from a long lifetime in the ways of war. It gladdened Agamemnon, who said to him, "I wish you had the same force in your legs as in your fighting heart. I wish your strength were whole again. The wrinkling years have worn you. Better some other soldier had your age and you were still among the young." And Nestor, Earl of Gerenia, charioteer, replied, "Agamemnon, I too could wish I were that man who killed the great Eurythalion. But the immortal gods have given men all things in season. Once my youth, my manhood, now my age has come. No less for that. I have my place among the charioteers to counsel and command them. Duties fit for elder men these are. The young can be good lancers, good with spears. Men who were born in a later day and still can trust their powers." The son of Atreus heard him out and passed happily onward. Next he found Menestheus, the good horse-handler, son of Peteus, waiting, surrounded by Athenians, good hands in battle. Near him, too, the great tactician Odysseus had his place, with Cephallenians in ranks around him, not at all feeble. These waited, for word of battle had not reached them, but only a first ripple in the lines of Trojans and Achaeans. There they stood, as though they waited for some other troop to move out and make contact with the Trojans. Surveying these, Lord Agamemnon, marshal of fighting men, in urgent speak rebuked them. "Son of Peteus, whom the gods reared, you too, Odysseus, hero of battle, guile, and greed, why both so deferential, so retiring? Waiting for other troops? You two should be among the first in action, in the blaze of combat, as you both are first to hear my word of feasting, every time we Achaeans prepare a feast for our staff officers. There is the fare you like, roast meat and cups of honey-hearted wine, all you desire, but now you'd gladly see 10 troops ahead of you, moving up to attack with naked bronze." Odysseus, the wily field commander, scowled at him and answered, "Son of Atreus, what is this panic you permit yourself? How can you say we'd let a fight go by, ever, at any time, when we Achaeans against the Trojans whet the edge of war? If you will make it your concern, you'll see the father of Telemachus in action, hand to hand, in the enemy's front ranks. Your bluster is all wind." Lord Agamemnon, sure of his angry man, replied, smiling and taking back his provocation. "Son of Laertes and the gods of old, Odysseus, master mariner and soldier, I would not be unfair to you. I need not give you orders, knowing as I do that you are well disposed toward all I plan. Your thought is like my own. Come then, in time we'll make amends for this, if anything uncalled for has been said. God send the sea winds, blow it out of mind." He left them there, and going amid others found Diomedes, gallant son of Tydeus, with combat cars and horses all around him, still at a stand. Nearby stood Sthelenos, the son of Capaneus, and Agamemnon, at a first glimpse, in scathing speech rebuked him. "Baffling! Son of Tydeus, the battle-wise, breaker of horses, why are you so shy, so wary of the passages of war? Your father did not lag like this, nor care to, far from it. He would rather fight alone, ahead of all his men, or so they said, who saw him toil in battle. I myself never met him, never laid eyes on him, but men say that he had no peer. In peace, without a fight, as Polynices' ally, he entered old Mycenae hunting troops. At that time, they were marching to besiege the ancient walls of Thebes, and they appealed for first-rate men as volunteers. Our people agreed and would have granted these, but Zeus, by inauspicious omens, changed their minds. Taking the road and well along, the army came to Asopus in his grassy bed, a river deep in rushes. There again they ordered Tydeus forward with a message. Forward he went, and found Cadmeans thronging a great feast in the manor of Eteocles, where, though no liege nor distant friend, and though he came alone amid so many, Tydeus went unafraid. He challenged them to wrestling, and easily beat them all, being seconded so well by Athena. Those goaders of horses, the furious Cadmeans, laid a trap for him on his retreat up country. 50 men deployed in a strong ambush by 2 leaders, Maon, immortal-seeming son of Haemon, and Polyphontes, Autophonus' son. But these as well Tydeus brought to grief. He killed them all but one. Maon he spared, and sent home, bid by portents from the gods. This then was Tydeus the Aetolian. Weaker than he in war, the man he fathered, stronger in assembly. Diomedes, the rugged man, said nothing whatsoever, accepting his commander's reprimand. But Sthelenos, the son of Capaneus, made a retort. "Atreides, why distort things when you know well how to be just? We say we are far better men than our fathers were. Not they, but we took Thebes of the 7 gates, leading a smaller force against a heavier wall. But heeding signs the gods had shown and helped by Zeus, our fathers, their own recklessness destroyed our fathers. Rate them less than equal to ourselves." Now rugged Diomedes, with a frown, turned and said, "Old horse, be still. Believe me, I do not take this ill from the Lord Marshal Agamemnon. He must goad the Achaeans to combat, for the glory goes to him if his detachments cut the Trojans down and take their powerful city, as the anguish goes to him also if his men are slain. Come, both of us should put our minds on valor." As he said this, he bounded from his car in full armor, and the bronze about his chest rang as he hit the ground. A captain roused. Even a stout heart would have feared him then. As down upon a shore of echoing surf, big waves may run under a freshening west wind, looming first on the open sea, and riding shoreward to fall on sand in foam and roar, around all promontories crested surges making a briny spume inshore, so now formations of Danaans rose and moved relentlessly toward combat. Every captain called to his own. The troops were mainly silent. You could not have believed so great a host with war cries in its heart was coming on in silence, docile to its officers. And round about upon the soldiers shone the figured armor buckled on for war. The Trojans were not silent. Like the flocks that huddle countless in a rich man's pens, waiting to yield white milk and bleating loud continually as they hear their own lambs cry, just so the war cry of the Trojans rose through all that army, not as a single note, not in a single tongue, but mingled voices of men from many countries. This great army Ares urged on, the other grey-eyed Athena. Terror and rout and hate, insatiable sister-in-arms of man-destroying Ares, frail at first but growing till she rears her head through heaven as she walks the earth. Once more she sowed ferocity, traversing the ranks of men, redoubling groans and cries. When the long lines met at the point of contact, there was a shock of bull's hide, battering pikes, and weight of men in bronze. Bucklers with bosses ground into one another. A great din rose. In one same air, elation and agony of men destroying and destroyed, and earth astream with blood. In spring, snow-water torrents, risen and flowing down the mountain-sides, hurl at a confluence their mighty waters out of the gorges, filled by tributaries, and far away upon the hills a shepherd hears the roar. So when these armies closed, there came a toiling clamour. Antilochus was the first man to down a Trojan soldier, a brave man in the front line, Echepolus Thalicides. He hit him on the ridge that bore his crest, and driven in, the point went through his forehelm and his forehead bone, and darkness veiled his eyes. In the melee, he toppled like a tower. Then by the feet the fallen man was seized by Eliphenor Chalcodontiades, chief of Abantes, who tried to haul him out of range and strip him quickly of his arms. The trial was brief. Seeing him tugging at the corpse, his flank exposed beside the shield as he bent over, Agenor, with his spear shaft shod in bronze, hit him, and he crumpled. As he died, a bitter combat raged over his body between Trojan spearmen and Achaeans, going for one another like wolves whirling upon each other, man to man. Then Ajax Telamonius knocked down the son of Anthemion, Simicius, in the full bloom of youth. On slopes of Ida descending, by the banks of clear Simis, his mother had conceived him, while she kept a vigil with her parents over flocks. He got his name for this. To his dear parents he never made return for all their care, but had his life cut short when Ajax's shaft unmanned him. In the lead as he came on, he took the spear thrust squarely in the chest, beside the nipple on the right side, piercing him, the bronze point issued by the shoulder blade, and in the dust he reeled and fell. A poplar growing in bottom lands, in a great meadow, smooth-trunked, high up to its sheath of boughs, will fall before the chariot-builder's axe of shining iron, timber that he marked for warping into chariot tire rims, and, seasoning, it lies beside the river. So vanquished by the god-reared Ajax lay Simicius and Themides. At Ajax, in his turn, the son of Priam, Antiphos, glittering in his cuirass, made a spear cast, but he missed and hit instead Leucos, Odysseus' comrade, in the groin as he bent low to pull away the corpse. It dropped out of his grasp and he fell over it. Odysseus, wrought to fury at this death, with flashing helmet shouldered through the ranks to stand above him, glowering right and left, he kept his lance in play and made the Trojans facing him recoil. With no waste motion he cast and hit a bastard son of Priam, Democoon, who had come down from Abydos, where he kept racing horses. Full of rage over his dead companion, Odysseus speared him in the temple, and the spearhead passed clean through his head from side to side, so darkness veiled his eyes. When he fell down, he thudded, and his armour clanged upon him. The Trojan front gave way, Prince Hector too, while Argives raised a great yell. Dragging dead men out of the press, they made a deep advance. Now looking down from Pergamos, Apollo in indignation cried out to the Trojans, "Forward, Trojans, breakers of horses! Will you bow in fury of battle to the Argives? When hit, they are not made of iron or stone to make the cutting bronze rebound. See too, Achilles, child of Thetis, is not fighting, but tasting wrath and wrong beside the ships." The terrible god cried out thus from his tower, and on the Achaean side, Tritogeneia, glorious daughter of Zeus, went through the ranks to lift the hearts of those she saw dismayed. The next on whom fate closed was Diores Amarynceades, hit by a jagged stone low on the right leg near the ankle. Peiros threw it, Peiros Imbracides, a Thracian captain, one who had come from Aenos. With the bone itself, the vicious stone crushed both leg tendons utterly, and the tall man tumbled down into the dust, flinging his arms out wide to his companions, panting his life away. But on the run, the man who hit him, Peiros, came with a spear to gash him by the navel. His bowels were spilled, and darkness veiled his eyes. Then Thoas the Aetolian lunged at Peiros, hitting him with a spear above the nipple, so the bronze point stuck in his lung. And Thoas, at close quarters, wrenching the heavy spear, pulled it out of his chest, then drew his sword and killed him with a stroke square in the belly. His gear could not strip, though. Friends of the dead man, top-knotted Thracians, closing round with spears, repulsed him, huge and powerful as he was, a noble figure. Staggering, he gave ground. As for the two, They lay there in the dust, stretched out near one another. Captain of Thracians and captain of Epeans mailed in bronze, while others, many, fell in death around them. Thereafter, no man could have scorned that fight, no veteran of battle who might go round untouched amid the action. An observer led by Athena with his hand in hers, shielded by her from stones and arrows' flight. For that day, throngs of Trojans and Achaeans, prone in the dust, were strewn beside each other.